Okay, we are beginning.
And we are ready to roll, folks. All right. Okay. Welcome back to episode 10 of Music Memories with Arknolia Bean and Dr. Earl W. Brown here. And we're still continuing our discussion on the mighty Fab Four. And we left off with, I guess it was the album. No, I think it was Rubber Soul that we left
We
off
left
there.
off on Rubber Soul,
Yep.
but I was telling Dr. Earl that on the last episode I skipped an album unintentionally. That, excuse me.
Sorry.
That was called The Early Beatles, and it included a lot of the songs they did prior to their first Capitol album that
Yeah.
were released on VJ, and there was some good stuff here.
Yeah.
Love Me Do, Twist and Shout, Anna,
Yep.
Chains, Boys, Ask Me Why, Please Please Me,
Yep.
P.S. I Love You, Baby It's You, A Taste of Honey, Do You Want to Know a Secret, which was actually a really big song.
Good song, yeah. Good song there. And of
But
course and we also got to include this one record that Capitol put it out. It was kind of considered one of the, I know it was a lame idea. I don't know if there's copies of this around. It was called The Beatles Story. It was like, has some sort of a narration, like an audio documentary featuring some sort of a narrator telling their whole story, featuring some of their lamest songs, according to most critics here. And it was just, it was a double set there.
right,
So at that time, I think that maybe qualified as the first double album, if I'm correct, because from my remembrance, Freak Out by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention was that ever first double album to come out.
I guess you'd call it the first legitimate double album.
Mm,
Yeah, I remember that. I got that album when it first came out,
yeah.
so I remember that album.
Oh yeah. And I guess let me look it up online here. The Beatles Story album here. Let me look. Here it is. It was the sixth studio album by the Beatles in the States. Came out in November of 1964. At that time, there was no limit on how many singles and albums you could release.
Yeah,
At that time, and like when you look at between the 64 and 66 up until about Revolver, the Beatles and their Capitol release terms, they took about, let's see, about, they recorded so many tracks, so they were able to put out all those records like Meet the Beatles second album, Beatles 65, Yesterday and Today, Rubber Soul, and the plus of the two ones that we just mentioned here, the early Beatles and the Beatles story, they put it out tons of records, U.S. wise,
right.
when you think about it there. And it's a documentary double album featuring interviews, press conferences, snippets of original and orchestral versions of their songs, and a voice-over narration. The album's original liner notes describe it as a narrative and musical biography of Beatlemania. It was produced by Gary Usher, who was a Los Angeles-based songwriter and producer, and a DJ named Roger Christian, and narrated by John Babcock, Al Willman, and I guess Christian, yeah, Roger Christian as well. Now, Capitol, believe it or not, issued this album in response to an album called Hear the Beatles Tell All, which was the same thing, a collection of radio interviews with the band carried out on Los Angeles disc jockeys. Now, that album came out on VJ Records, one that label we were talking about that had all the early Beatles stuff there. The
Right.
company also the company also sought to complete the unauthorized Beatles interview records issues by the Radio Pulse Beat label, which released three albums hosted by a man named Ed Ruby. The Beatles story peaked at number 7 on the Billboard Top Albums charts and was certified gold by the Recording Industry Association of America. And in 2014, that album was reissued as part of the Beatles U.S. albums box set. You know. So, there we go. Those two albums that we forgot to mention on the last episode there.
Right, right.
The early Beatles and the Beatles story there. Now, last we left off at Rubber Soul, and we're about to get into when they're more prog rock type of era with a Revolver, Sergeant Pepper,
Yeah, because actually they
Magical
hit,
Mystery Tour, and of course, go ahead.
of course, they hit all sorts of genres. They did psychedelic also,
Yeah.
and I guess in
In
a
fact,
sense, George Harrison was so enamored with Indian music that he even did a couple
yeah,
of songs that have the Indian sound to them.
yeah, Within You, Without You from Sergeant Pepper, the opening track from side two.
Right.
And plus, this is when at the period that they started forming their own record label, Apple Records.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was about a couple years after the crossover from the traditional pop rock stuff there into the psychedelic trippy stuff there.
Yeah. They still had the rock roots. I mean, they still had songs that were rock, but they experimented with other things to go along with them.
Yeah, it was. So, for example, Helter Skelter from the White Album, that is cited as one of the first heavy metal songs next to Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf.
Yeah. Yeah. But Revolver had, well, the odd thing is it actually had three Harrison songs in addition to Lennon McCartney, which
Oh,
was a little
wow.
unusual. But it starts out with Taxman, which is the first George Harrison song, and you know
Hmm.
it was one that everybody seemed to like because it
And I
painted a
could
picture.
relate to.
Yeah, and then Eleanor Rigby, which was a pretty decent song too. Well,
Which by the way often gets covered by all these underground goth bands when you really think about it. There was this one more metalized guitar version of that track by a group called Godhead from an album in 2000 called 1000 Years a Human Era. It came out on a label called Post-Human Recordings, which was ran by very briefly by Marilyn Manson. It was the only record that come out on that particular label, but sadly, I guess Manson didn't have the balls or the skills to run a record label at that time. So that album is currently hard to find there.
yeah, and then they followed that up with "I'm Only Sleeping," which is a pretty decent song too.
Yep.
Well, there's very few Beatles songs that I'm going to say are bad. There's some that I don't like as much as others, but anyway. Next song on the album was "Love You Too," which is another Harrison composition.
Uh huh.
Then "Here, There, and Everywhere."
Oh yeah. Um, one of the Paul's best bad love ballads there, next to Yesterday.
Yeah. Then "Yellow Submarine," which even though Lennon McCartney wrote it, became basically a Ringo Starr song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then She Said," which is a interesting song. It's the start of seeing a little bit of difference in the way they were doing things.
Yeah.
"Good Day Sunshine," "And Your Bird Can Sing."
Oh yeah. Great song there.
Yeah. "For No One," which was another pretty good song. "Dr. Robert."
Oh yeah. Huh. Now, is this the UK version you go? That's right.
Yeah,
UK
well,
version you're going by?
yeah, I'm kind of doing that because
Because
all
I
the
remember.
songs are included, but not, all the ones that are included on the American version are also on here, plus
Yeah.
a couple extras.
Yeah,
But
because I
yeah,
remember Dr. Robert was included on the US version of Yesterday and Today.
yeah. And then "I Want to Tell You," which is another Harrison composition.
which, by the way, got covered excellently by Ted Nugent in 1979. He had an album called "The State of Shock," which he
Right.
covered that song, and he pretty damn good job on it.
Yeah. And next one was "Got to Get You Into My Life," which is kind of an interesting song in a way because John Lennon said it was the best drug song ever written. And for
Oh,
a long time,
really?
I didn't realize that for a long time. But
Wow.
after you listen to it and you hear the words and kind of think about, does this is this about drugs? You can kind of see that after you know it. Before you don't really see it, but then after you hear it for a while, it's like, oh, okay, I can see where that's possible.
You know, I gotta also mention this. Did you ever listen to the Earth, Wind, and Fire cover of that song
Oh
there?
yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah,
good
so you
version.
saw the Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band movie with Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees when that came out.
Yeah, I even had the soundtrack.
I was in school one time and they had the soundtrack up there, and I would listen to that a lot of times.
Oh yeah,
I mean, and plus, another cover from that record was Aerosmith doing "Come Together." They did that top notch, no doubt.
yeah. Well, when we get to the cover versions of songs, we'll have ones the good ones, and a second episode that's the bad ones
Hmm.
of all groups. And
Yeah.
now the last song that I show on this album is probably their most interesting one, and it's definitely a Lennon composition. Is "Tomorrow Never Knows." That
Well,
is definitely a psychedelic song, without question. Probably one of the first, but it's got all kinds of trippy stuff going on in it, and it's a very interesting song if you know it or you're familiar with it.
oh yeah. And so, Revolver was also the cover of that album cover was done by a good close friend of theirs. From name is a good friend of theirs named Klaus Varman, I think his last name is pronounced.
Yeah, I think that's correct. That's an
Yeah,
interesting cover too.
it is because it included their real eyes from the black and white photos mixed in with this drawings here, with a collage of other black and white photos mixed in together of the band. It's kind of unique how they did that. And when you think about it, when I first heard the name Revolver, I thought it was something like, oh, they're revolving into this, revolving into this other phase here. But when you think about it, a revolver is also a name of a gun.
Yeah, and it's that was one of the things about a lot of what the Beatles did. A lot of times it could be taken several different ways. It
Yeah.
wasn't just this is the way it is. You could get the innuendo on just about anything of that nature. That's what made them interesting too.
Yeah. So you have to really fit. They're not only providing you with good music, they're also giving you something to think about, what the song's about and what they are referring to there.
Yeah, they were one of the ones that was really good in making songs that you had to think about. What does
Mhm.
this song mean? What are they trying to say here? And to this day, in some of them, you've got to really think about it because it's just
Yeah.
not absolutely clear, which makes them interesting.
I don't know.
And next was probably the most groundbreaking album of all time.
Oh yeah, one of the all-time summer albums still to this day. I remember hearing this album, as I mentioned in the last episode, on what is called a four-track cartridge. It was like a same thing as an eight-track, but with just instead of four, it just had two programs, one and two there. My dad had something like this. He had that. He had a whole bunch of others, including some Motown compilations, um, the album Sugar by Nancy Sinatra, one
Yeah.
by Dean Martin, a whole bunch of others there. I don't know where I don't know if it's still back in Michigan or whichever or whatever, but anybody who has this, you got yourself a big damn collector's item right there, man.
Well, I know that when this album first came out, I was at home and a friend came over and he says, "You got to hear this." And he showed me the album and I looked at it and I was kind of like, whoa, because you're familiar with the cover, you know what it looks like. And it folded out. It was a gatefold type cover. and it just like it was astounding to see this and see the album. And I was like, well, I can't wait to hear what it sounds like. Put it on the record player and started playing it, and it was just total enrapture listening to this thing.
Oh
It was
man.
like, holy cow, this is incredible because it was nothing like anything we'd ever heard before. It was, well, to use an old expression, it was mind blowing because it really was.
Hmm.
They started out with the song Sergeant Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band, and then it
Hmm.
broke into With a Little Help from My Friends, which Ringo Starr sang.
Yeah, under the name Billy Shears.
Yeah. And then after that was a real psychedelic number, Lucy in the Sky with
Uh,
Diamonds.
oh gosh, I remembered all the stories. All these evangelists and Christian groups, they were condemning that song because of the
Initials.
main letter, yeah, the initials and the capital initials. Because words like with the in the are not don't usually get capital letters in the front there. They usually reserve that for the main words like Lucy, Sky, and Diamonds.
Yeah,
And
and that's
so all
normal.
the yeah, exactly.
And the
But
funny
a
thing
lot of
was, John Lennon later said that that was a song that he wrote because his son was drawing a picture, and he asked his son what it was about, and he said, "What's about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds?" He said,
oh,
"Oh, cool," and he wrote a song.
yep, and that song today will be later be covered by John Lennon. I'm not
Oh,
really
yep,
not.
yep.
Excuse me,
John, Elton John,
Elton John. My
Elton
apologies.
John. No, I knew who you meant. I just,
Yeah, and of course, Lennon would be singing backup on that track as well.
yeah. And then they did right after that song was "Getting Better," which was a pretty decent song too.
Yeah. Hmm.
Then "Fixing
Which
a
by
Hole." Oh, go ahead.
yeah, by the way, that song "Getting Better" was inspired. Part of that song was inspired by a fill-in drummer that they have. Well, I guess Ringo was having his tonsils taken out, so they had to have a fill-in drummer for a couple of shows there. And when Paul asked how his routine with the band was going, the guy would say, "It's getting better," because you're going to fill in some big shoes up there when you're up with the band taking one particular spot there.
Oh, yeah.
And there was also a mention there that kind of it's kind of disturbing to talk about. The last verse of that song featured, I used to be cruel to my woman, I beat her and kept her
Oh,
all the things that she
yeah.
loved.
Those were some controversial lyrics then.
I know because at that time John Lennon was being a bastard to his first wife Cynthia, and I was like, I always wondered about that myself. It's like I hope Lennon was not a wife beater or something like that because that would bother the hell out of me.
Yeah, I think it's more of a mental thing, but I could be wrong.
Who knows? We may never know because let both John and Cynthia are now deceased.
Right, right.
And I
And if he
guess
was
I
doing that, nobody else would have been privy to it. So,
yeah, true. So that definitely stirred up some questions, no doubt.
yeah. They followed that up with "Fixing a Hole," which was a good song too. It was interesting
Yeah,
too. It was just strange.
yeah,
And they followed that up with another McCartney song. You can tell it's a McCartney song. As She's Leaving
all right,
Home.
yeah. A woman. It was just details. A woman, not happy in the house that she was living in, the area that she was living in. She was searching for something more, so she leaves a note and just departs.
Yeah, but it's a good song.
It is absolutely
Then they
because it
followed that
gives.
up with another really psychedelic song, "Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite,"
Yep,
which is full of calliope noises and things of that.
a
That
lot
is a
of
cool
noises.
song.
It is. It's like unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. Can you imagine hearing that whole track when you're about 11 years old and you still got that projection of the mop top, the suit wearing,
Yeah,
Beatles there, and then you see the cover and then you hear some of the music on that record, you're like, holy moroli.
yeah. It definitely was a groundbreaking album at the time. Still is.
Yeah. Still today, I still classify it as one of the top-notch albums to play during summertime, no matter where you're at.
Yeah,
I when when I got it on cassette years later, I would blast it while I was driving in my first car along Gratiot Avenue back in Michigan. A lot of times, you know, I remember listening to it, and as I mentioned, with my dad's four-track player, and I
right.
was like, listen in. I tried to record it, get it on cassette or something like that, because we had that's when it first got introduced to recording tapes. That it was we called it at that time.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Well, then they opened up side two with the only Harrison composition on this album's "Within You, Without You," which
that we
is,
mentioned earlier.
and you can definitely tell the Indian influence in that song.
Absolutely. They were getting Harrison was really getting into a lot of that Hindu spiritual kind of stuff
Oh yeah,
at that period there.
and then followed that with the McCartney. Well, you know it's McCartney.
Oh
When I'm
yeah.
64.
Yeah. I'll bet when he turned at that particular age, that
Yeah, that song probably brought back a few
played a
memories.
lot on
Yeah,
that day when he actually turned that particular age. I wonder if you know what would be interesting. What if he ever came up with a sequel to that titled "When I'm 78"?
yeah, yeah. Then followed that up with "Lovely Rita."
About a meter maid that I guess Paul had a thing for. I guess
I
if I'm
think
correct.
so. Yeah, because he wrote that one too.
Yes, correct.
And
And
then
then,
followed that with Good Morning," which was pretty obviously a Lennon song.
yep, with all the little farm animals, and at the end of the track there, as the songs start to fade it out there, something they took from Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys album.
Right. Which
Then when you
I
think
think
about it,
we mentioned that McCartney was absolutely enamored with the Pet Sounds album, and Lennon liked it too, and they thought, we got to do something like this too, and that's how
yeah,
Sergeant Pepper was born.
yeah, and both albums still one of the top priority albums for each when you think about it there.
Right. And then they followed that song up with a reprise of the Sergeant Pepper's song that opened the album,
Yep,
and then they closed it with probably one of their, I think it's my favorite on this album, "A Day in the Life,"
yep.
which was one of the few times that Lennon and McCartney combined, because Lennon wrote the part about
I read the
the
news
news today,
today.
oh
Oh
boy.
boy, yep,
And then that middle part, "Woke up, got out of bed, dragged a comb across my head," that's McCartney. And they
yep,
just combined the two of them together.
yep.
This song is
And
in
by
the Guinness Book of World Records. I don't know if it's still there or not, because it has the longest sustained chord at the end of the song. I think
yeah,
it's
and
like
what
over
they
a minute.
and for what I understand, George Martin, when that chord was done, Martin kept raising slowly the volume control up there to make that chord last longer than it was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it also fits to say that that song would later be a part of the famous Paul is dead rumor that came out a couple years afterwards, because it mentioned someone dying in a car crash
Right.
that didn't notice the lights had changed. And apparently Paul had died in a particular accident such as that.
Well, there's a lot of things that get tied to that. That well, it's kind of a shame Dave Rose isn't here because he knows a lot of them. Uh, but there's a
Oh,
lot of things that are tied to that you can go back and say, oh, that indicates Paul is dead.
yeah.
It's a lot of things like that.
A lot of things there then. And also when the orchestra when the towards the end of the track when the orchestra starts up again after Lennon says, I love to turn you on. You can hear someone, I think it's a conductor, saying, counting backwards, like 10, 9, 8, or a or the regular way. But you can hear it right in them as the mic picks it up. You can hear the conductor counting as the orchestra started up again with its little trip there towards the end.
Yeah, and I think that I read somewhere that the orchestra was told the what should we play? And said, just freak out.
Mm.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah, that's what she did. Yeah. That's also a funny thing. I remember I need to point this little thing out there. And this was a long time rumor, and this was a long time, a discussion between both Beatles and Stones fans. Was there a rivalry between the Rolling Stones and the Beatles? Because a lot of bands were successful at that point. The Beatles were, of course, still on the top, I guess. The Stones were still doing pretty well with their songs, like "Can't Get No Satisfaction," "This Will
Yeah.
Be the Last Time," and all these other all their classic tunes right there, like "Get Off of My Cloud" here. And so now I listened to a radio show not too long ago on NPR back in Michigan, and I had a discussion about that. And basically, even though there was somewhat of a rivalry, there was a huge amount of respect from one band to another.
Well,
I
as we
mean,
said
this,
before, the Stones album, their Satanic Majesty's Request, was an answer to Sergeant Pepper.
yeah, pretty much, yes, with the long title and the get up that the Stones had on the front cover there.
Right. Now I
And
got some. I got.
there's no, make go ahead there. I was going to mention a couple of things about that, about this. The Stones invited Lennon and McCartney to sing back up on the song called "We Love You" on one of their albums there.
Yeah.
And in one of the magazines that I had about the Beatles, Mick Jagger is in with by Paul McCartney as he was they were doing the song "A Day in the Life."
Well, another interesting note on A Day in the Life that was just pointed out to me in my chat
Yes.
by Three Ponies was, as a day in the life ends, a 15 kilohertz high frequency tone is heard. It was added at Lennon's suggestion with the intention that it would annoy dogs.
Wow.
That makes
I
sense,
think I
actually.
remember hearing that. I think I do remember hearing that as well for some reason there.
But that does make sense. That does sound like something Lennon would do.
Yep. So obviously there. All right. So after Sergeant Pepper, we have Magical Mystery Tour.
Which was intended, well, it was a film, but the album
It
is
was a it was
it
a
was a copy of the soundtrack and some singles.
yeah combination of that all that together. One of them's Strawberry Fields Forever, which was originally intended to be on Sergeant Pepper there,
Yeah. But the
but
first
they
song
just
is Magical Mystery Tour, which Cheap Trick does a pretty good cover of this song.
oh yeah,
And Ambrosia did a cover.
oh nice.
So there's two pretty good covers of that song.
And also featured the Mellotron, a couple of the
Right.
tracks up there, including the beginning of Strawberry Fields, the track of Flying, and I guess a couple others, if I'm correct.
Well, as we get to them, we'll figure it out. Next song was The Fool on the Hill,
Hmm.
which was a nice McCartney composition. And then the aforementioned Flying, which is an instrumental,
Yeah,
which the Beatles didn't do instrumentals, but they did this one.
yeah,
Then they followed that up with Blue Jay Way, which I'm pretty sure had Mellotron in it.
yeah. Hmm.
And I think that was a Harrison song, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
believe so. Yes, definitely.
And then Your Mother Should Know, which is a McCartney song.
And of course, following that, a great one there. I Am the Walrus.
Yeah, and that was definitely a Lennon composition. And again, they dabbled in psychedelia on that one.
Oh yeah. And of course, side two would start with Hello, Goodbye.
And then Strawberry Fields, which again was a Lennon composition. They had a video for that song because I remember seeing it on Dick Clark's American Bandstand.
That's when they debuted their mustaches.
Yeah, and that follows, Penny Lane follows, which also had a video that got
Oh
played.
yeah. Yes. And by the way, that was also when people started noticing John Lennon wearing glasses.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
what the story was that Lennon had a lead one of the roles in a movie called How I Won the War, which was a course directed by Richard Lester, who did both Help and Hard Day's Night. He was given a pair of glasses to wear during the filming there, and apparently at the time the filming was done, those glasses would remain on his face for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because your eye, when you're wearing a pair of prescription eyewear, your eyes are going to somewhat get used to it somehow. And I guess from that point on, Lennon just started wearing glasses up until his death, from what I understand.
Yeah. And next song I thought was "Baby You're a Rich Man,"
Hmm.
which is another Lennon composition, I believe. And
Yeah,
"All You Need Is Love" closed it, which was a
which was a
it's kind
record,
of an
which was
anthem.
yes, it was. It was the anthem to the 1960s for all we need is love to get through. All we need is love to get us by. And you know what? It's been used in a lot of commercials. I remember there was a version recorded for the Salvation Army TV commercial. It has been mentioned many times in movies. I know John Travolta mentioned it in the movie Michael. Remember
Yeah.
what John and Paul said? Who was St. Paul or St. John? No. Lennon and McCartney. All you need is love.
Right. Yeah.
And by the way, there was what they did is that when they filmed the video for that, it wasn't really called video at that time. It was called, I guess, a promotional film, I guess.
Yeah.
And they lip synced it. They had the orchestra. I guess it was broadcasted from guess it was British TV to around the world, from my understand there.
They had a lot of people in that video. I mean, a ton of them.
Yeah. And also keep this in mind. This is the period a year before that they decided no more touring. They would
Yeah.
have to be they were now just strictly a studio group and nothing else.
Which, given their music, almost had to be that way.
Yeah, because back then they didn't have no samplers, they didn't have no real tapes. They would have to bring all those orchestra players, all those sound effects people, to all those unique instruments, just to recreate the same sound they did in the studio there for the viewing audience.
Yeah. Well, I got another interesting fact for you.
Yeah.
Blue Jay Way was named after a street in Hollywood Hills of Los Angeles where Harrison stayed in August of '67.
Oh, wow. And did any shenanigans go on at that time?
It's probably pretty sure that's a good idea. That yeah, I imagine so.
Because I remember there was a lot. Paul McCartney was said in the Playboy interview that the story behind "He Said, She Said," because there was something like the Beatles were doing some sort of a few amount of drugs at this party, and there was this reporter from some newspaper lurking around somewhere to get all whatever scoop he can, whether it's this person talking to that person, or who's acting disorderly, or who's acting drunk or high on something there. And the Beatles knew about this, so they were trying to keep themselves, hidden away, so their image wouldn't be blown to bits.
Right.
And Ringo was on something there, and he kept saying, "I know what it's like to be dead. I know what it's like to be dead." And the rest would tell him, "Shut up, Ringo, shut up." And I guess that became a key element to that particular song.
Yeah, a lot of really good songs are based on things that people pick up in their experiences in life, and
Yeah.
the Beatles were kings at that.
Yep.
Now the next album is the White Album, double
Oh
set,
yeah.
and it was the first Apple Beatles album.
Yep. Their first album that came out on. It was their first long playing album on Apple Records. They actually started that as a way of giving emerging artists a chance to have their music recorded there. The Beatles were the first start there. They actually the
Well, that was the
excuse me
purpose
there. I'm getting
behind
tongue tied.
There was a purpose behind swan songs that Led Zeppelin did too, was give new artists
Yeah, yeah,
a place to go. So the Beatles
yeah, but
started that, and then Led Zeppelin followed it up. And I don't
yeah.
know if that's what the
Now the
Stones
difference,
intended with theirs or not.
I know, but I do know that Zeppelin's label was a lot better than what Apple was. Because
Yeah.
when you look at the whole Apple story there, what the problem was, I mean, a lot of people were saying, that Yoko was the blame for the Beatles breakup. Not so, not in my
No.
eyes. The
From
thing
what
was,
I've
no,
seen and
because
heard, it was McCartney more than any of them.
I guess he was trying to take control of the Beatles. He was offering this management to the Beatles there, while Lennon had this particular guy that, and I guess those two guys couldn't agree on, and that's when the Beatles started not agreeing on this particular thing or that
Well,
particular subject there.
that and McCartney released that solo album, which the rest of the Beatles kind of looked, whoop, I guess it's over.
Yeah. And what the story about that was that, they were about to release the Let It Be album, and at the same time, McCartney released his solo disc, which was called McCartney. And what it was is that Ringo was asked by the other two members, John and George, to ask Paul, can you delay your solo record till after the Let It Be album comes out, and in which McCartney revolted by kicking the Ringo out of the house.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the Yoko Ono thing. I don't think she was a cause or a reason.
No,
Uh, she was there, but I don't think she was a reason.
no. I think what it was that the Beatles couldn't really agree on which management to choose, whether it's Alan Klein suggested by Lennon or Lee Eastman suggested by McCartney, because Brian Epstein, their manager from the word go, their backup bone, their guardian angel, he had OD'd in
Yeah,
'68 from he OD'd on a thing called barbiturates.
right.
And so there was no one to really take care of the Beatles' finances, their issues there, how to deal with the press there, because like I said, he was their backup bone. He
Right.
was like he was basically their strong arm of the law to put forth there. And now that strong arm was gone, and they kind of like found themselves in a big predicament there. And plus, when you think about it, running a record label takes a lot of skill. You have to
Right.
know how much to spend, how much not to spend. You have to know how to directly promote this artist, and you have to promote it till they actually start selling the records, that they do well on the charts and on the radio. Because a lot of the artists on Apple, with the exception of Badfinger, who were often christened the second Beatles,
Billy
other
Preston, I think, was on Apple II, I believe.
yeah, so I believe so as well, including James Taylor. He released an album on that label there, and it was the only one. He would later
Yeah.
sign with Warner Brothers and became a big superstar afterwards. Some lady named Nikki Hopkins, she
Right.
released it, I guess, one or
Well,
two
actually,
singles for an album.
That was Mary
Mary Hop.
Hopkins,
All right, thank you. I
and she
get the
did.
two mixed up.
Those were the days. I knew if I
Mhm.
thought about it, that song would come in my head. It was a I believe, about a 5 minute song, which was a little unusual.
Yeah, at that time. But then again, Hey Jude was about over 7 minutes. So
Yeah, but that came later.
yeah, but
Okay, the original listings I have is the first song was "Back in the USSR."
hmm
You don't know how lucky you are, boy.
yeah,
And then,
which was a spoof of Chuck Berry's "Back in the USA."
yeah, and followed that up with a Lennon song. At this point, you could tell which one of them wrote the songs.
Yep.
"Dear Prudence."
Which Susie and the Banshees covered years later on during the London, UK goth scene there, which is still played on the radio at some of the nightclubs now and then.
Yeah. Then they followed that up with "Glass Onion."
The Walrus was Paul.
right,
Another added clue to the Paul's dead rumor.
right. Then they followed that up with, oh, this is a McCartney song, Oobla Dee, Oobla Da.
hmm Yeah,
Then
great
Wild
song
Honey,
there.
yeah, Wild Honey Pie.
Yep. And of course, after that, the continuing story of Bungalow Bill, who I guess was some sort of a hunter in the midst of Africa, if I understand.
I believe that's correct, yes. And that's
And
obviously a Lennon song.
You can hear Yoko singing backup on the chorus there.
Yeah.
And one of the lines up there, I guess, which one was it? It was in the last verse. I couldn't make out what she said because a lot of times she was hard to understand when it came to singing.
If you can call it that.
Yeah. And at the end, the last lyric was her and Lennon harmonizing, saying, "If looks could kill, it would have been us instead of him."
Yeah. Then they followed
All
up
the
with
children sing.
then they followed excuse me. They followed up with I consider a really good song by George Harrison, While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Oh yeah, still classic to this day. Still, if you ever checked out the Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, you know, Prince doing that song at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I definitely suggest
Oh yeah,
check it out there.
the
Yeah,
Prince
because
guitar solo is phenomenal.
yeah, it's kind of interesting. Prince, the '80s funk master next to Rick James, jamming out to a Beatles song. When you think about it, there.
Well, the kind of guitarist Prince was, I heard a story once that a reporter asked Eric Clapton how did it feel to be the greatest guitar player alive, and he said, "I don't know, go ask Prince."
Yeah, I remember reading that as well. So, little do so I guess when Prince arrived in rock and roll heaven, he was probably congratulated by George Harrison, saying, "Thank you for doing participating in that cover of my tune there." No doubt.
Yeah, because like you're telling everybody, and I'll amen to that. Is
Yep.
if you get a chance, go find that and listen to it because it's really good.
Yeah. And by the way, I also mentioned this to the point. Speaking of Prince, you remember that album he did a year after Purple Rain, titled "Around the World in a Day"?
I'm not.
It
It
came
doesn't ring a bell.
It came out in 1985. It was the first on his label, Paisley Park Records, and
Right,
it was recorded ahead of time before him and the Revolution went on their Purple Rain tour throughout 1984. There,
right.
1985. He recorded it ahead of time so he'd get that out of the way, and a year later they decided to put that album out. It had a lot of more flashy, a lot more psychedelic feels to that record there. And I guess some of the writers there, including one back in Michigan, I forgot his name there, but he wrote for a magazine called Cream, and he said that I guess you could say that Prince is trying to do his version of Sergeant Pepper with this one.
Yeah. Side two opens with Martha My Dear, which is again a McCartney song,
Yep.
and followed it up with I'm So Tired, which is a Lennon song.
Yep, I guess that's how he was. I guess his mind was on Yoko Ono when he wrote that song. Because when you're thinking about someone, it's hard to sleep.
Yeah. Then a really good McCartney song, Blackbird, followed that up.
Oh yeah, a beautiful song. I remember. I think Sarah McLachlan did her version of that at one time. I guess on some radio show, if I'm correct.
Right.
Mhm. And I guess there was a story behind that song. Let me look it up there. I guess it
Yeah,
was
there
a
is a
sort of a
story that I don't recall what it was, but it was written for someone or about
yeah,
someone, and I don't
I'm
remember who.
looking. Okay, I'm looking it up right now on the Wikipedia, and apparently, um, the meaning of the song "Blackbird" was about it was states that it was McCartney inspired while reading a newspaper account of U.S. race riots in the mid 1968. and it was apparently written as a metaphor of the struggle of the black civil rights. But John Lennon takes credit for one line in the song that was added. And so it was about the civil rights movement in the
Right.
1968 era. No doubt about that.
Now, next song is a Harrison song. It's Piggies, which
Oh
is
yeah,
interesting. It's not a bad
very
song,
interesting
though.
because when you think it is, but when you think about it, I think I can't help but think about that one Denny's commercial where they advertise a bacon type breakfast, and the one that talking about it is Miss Piggy.
Right. Well, it
that, when that commercial first started airing, the song Piggies came right to my mind up there. That's just,
well, what I'm seeing is written by George Harrison as a social commentary. The song serves as an Orwellian satire on greed and consumerism.
mm. So basically the consumering pigs are taking over, I guess,
Yeah.
in his mind there. Yep. And it still carried on. There was a lot of that mentioned throughout the 1990s because corporation was like the big C word
Right.
back in that period there. And you know which C word we are referring to.
Hmm.
Yep, and I'm not going to mention it.
And next song was Rocky Raccoon.
A Western,
Yeah.
a song about revenge.
Right.
And that's where they dabbled into the country bit there, which is pretty damn good when you really think about it there. The damn good story there. I always wondered if we ever should have got to get a sequel to that from McCartney at some time later on. So did Rocky Raccoon get back at this guy Danny for stealing his gal?
Yeah. Yeah. No, the Beatles pretty much over time hit all the genres some way.
Yeah.
Next song is a Richard Starkey written composition, Don't Pass Me By.
Oh yeah, one of the some very few songs that Ringo actually wrote and sang on.
Right. It didn't give him many for some reason.
Well, I don't know why, because it was a pretty good track there. It's kind of like it had a hillbilly feel to it when you think about it with the violin
Yeah.
solos throughout the track there.
Yeah. It's pretty obvious country that Starr had a affinity for country music because I mean he did act naturally too was definitely a country song.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think no doubt. I think those the songs that we mentioned were probably covered on. There was this album called America Salutes the Beatles. It was our songs performed by U.S. country artists, and I'm thinking that possibly either Rocky Raccoon, Act Naturally, or Don't Pass Me By were probably covered. I should probably look that up there right now.
While you're doing that, I'll go on to the last three tracks on side two
Go
of the
ahead.
first album.
Yes.
Why don't we do it in the road? Okay. Then it follows up by I Will, which was an interesting follow up to that previous song. And
Hmm.
then another pretty good Lennon composition, Julia, which I
Yep.
believe was about his mother.
Yeah, who sadly died in a car wreck when he was a young boy there. I guess it was after the departure of his father, if I understand, Fred Lennon.
Yeah, and when we get to the Lennon solo stuff, he had one song that was called Mother
Mm.
that talked about his mother and his father. And the lyrics are compelling. In fact, if you're emotional in any way, it'll bring a tear to your eye because
It will, because,
you can hear the plaintive plea in his voice.
yep, you know, definitely. So no doubt Lennon had a lot of emotional scars, no doubt about,
Oh
still
yeah,
planted in his
yeah.
head, which we got to get to later on with
Oh,
a certain record that,
we'll do a Lennon episode later
yeah,
when we get to the
definitely,
70s.
yeah. Because there was this one album he released, it's titled John Lennon slash Plastic Ono Band, which
Yeah,
all the content on that album was against what the early Beatles were about, needless to say.
Yeah, I think Instant Karma was on that album, wasn't it?
No, that was a plain single there. That was just a single on its own, from what I understand there.
Yeah. And I know on his first solo album, he did a song called "How Do You Sleep," which
Yeah,
is essentially about, well,
Paul.
you can pick up that it's about Paul pretty
Yeah,
easily.
absolutely, yes. And in fact, I guess Ringo and George were participants on that song track there, and I guess it was Ringo who probably uttered the word, "Come on, John, that's enough, okay?"
Yeah, yeah, because you could definitely hear some bitterness there.
And we got the Beatles playing in the background. I
How'd that happen? I'm not playing anything.
have no clue. I'm not playing anything myself, man.
Is somebody on this call that you don't know about?
Let me check up here. No, it's JB's back.
Oh, hey, don't get us struck here.
Sorry,
JB
boys.
from Sports. What's up? JB from JB Sports Radio is on the call with us.
Hello,
I heard
Mr.
I heard you
JB.
guys doing the Beatles stuff, so I thought I'd give you a little bed in the background.
There you
Sweet.
go.
There we go.
Record two starts with "Birthday," which is plays
Side
at a
three.
lot of birthdays.
Yeah,
I get
we're discussing the White Album and the many styles of that particular record there.
that particular record alone had a ton of different styles on it.
It was the most diverse record in rock and roll, no doubt about that. Put forth there. So how you enjoying the show so far, JB?
Isn't that supposedly the album that kind of got Charles Manson to like commit the murders, or
Yeah,
is that just
Helter
another
yeah,
joke?
Skelter, it's coming up.
yeah. Helter Skelter. Yeah, that's the one that Manson stole for his troop there.
Then the next song was "Your Blues," which is a very bluesy Lennon song.
A lot of powerful bluesy song there, very powerful with a lot of powerful lyrics there. The eagle picks my eye, the worm he licks my bone, feel so suicidal.
Yeah, you have
He's
to
just
wonder where
like
Lennon
Village,
got some of
Mrs. Jones.
his lyrics sometimes.
Yeah, I wonder because he came up with a lot of crazy ones on that one there.
Well, that and then "Come Together" he does the same thing.
And plus, "Cry Baby Cry," the
Yeah,
lyrics of that song there.
yeah. And then next was well, like I said, this is the point you could tell who wrote what. McCartney wrote "Mother Nature's Son," no doubt.
Yeah. hmm
And then another Lennon song, "Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except for Me and My Monkey."
Yeah, probably the longest title for a track, but the Beatles ever put it out, I guess.
Yeah, at that time, but Pink Floyd had a song on their Ummagumma album called, well, a song.
Oh yeah, well, so it's not really
Several
a song.
small species of furry animals gathered together in a cave, grooving on a pick.
Yeah, which was basically Roger Waters doing all these sound from his voice there, looped, played backwards, sped up, slowed down. You know,
Strange number.
very number, but yet unique. How when you think about it,
Yeah, interesting too, actually.
and we got that song playing in the background right now. Everybody's got something to hide.
Then "Sexy Sadie."
Oh yeah, which by the way was written about that Maharashi that they visited prior to recording to White Album, and apparently I guess all but George, felt very dissatisfied and very disgruntled soon afterwards. But Harrison decided to carry on with that particular religion, and I guess and
And the next
so on and
song
so on.
was "Helter Skelter," which was for
Yep.
that time, a very heavy song.
Yeah, very heavy. One of the first heavy metal tracks out there, next to "Born to Be Wild" and "Voodoo Child" by Hendrix.
Yeah, and that's a McCartney composition, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah, but interesting.
And then the last song on side three is a Harrison
Long,
number.
long, long.
Yeah, a Harrison number. And then side four starts with "Revolution 1," which is a
Yep,
softer version of the single.
yep. Now there
Eh,
was supposed to have been a ultimate version that I remember Rolling Stone, talked about in one of their issues. There was supposed to be that version there with a lot of tapes, loops, and playing in the background there for about a few long minutes. The whole track was supposed to be about over 11 minutes
well,
there,
you got
and
a
it's
lot of it
just,
from Revolution 9.
yep, that's
Now, the
true.
interesting thing about Revolution 1 was, they're saying you want a revolution. Well, we all want change, but the way you're doing it's not right, is basically what that song's saying, uh, which is interesting because it's kind of a, yeah, we want to change things, but doing it where you fight everything. And because, yeah, because he even uses that line about if you're going to do all of this, you can count me out.
Yeah, why stoop to that low that you're fighting against? You're becoming, I guess, what Obi-Wan Kenobi said. You're becoming the very thing you swore to destroy.
Exactly. That's probably a good.
It,
Next song was Honey Pie, which is again a McCartney number.
uh-huh. With that a 1920s feel to it there,
Yeah. And then Harrison followed that up with Savoy Truffle.
which is about dessert. I guess a particular dessert in made in England, for I understand there.
I'm only playing 7 seconds. All right, I'm not gonna get you
I
started.
Okay.
know,
Don't
no,
get
no,
us
we're glad
bumped.
you're doing this, man.
Yeah. Next song was Cry Baby Cry, which was
Oh
actually a pretty
yeah,
decent song.
yeah,
Good
with
song.
interesting lyrics on that one. I guess it was a Lennon composition there, and I guess it's some sort of a king and queen, and entertaining their kids while one of them is cooking something. I guess there,
Yeah.
and of course we got to one of the main keys in the "Paul is dead" rumor, which came started a year later.
Yeah,
Revolution.
Revolution 9 was
Now the
full of
story
stuff.
yeah, the story behind that was that Lennon, got involved with Yoko Ono at this point. And she was an avant-garde artist. Lennon was looking to expand himself. Not just be a cuddly mop top as he was in the beginning. There, he was looking to expand a lot of things. So I guess him and I guess a couple other people, I understand, got all these tape loops, all these sound effects, and just collaged them all together. And one is probably one that considered the pioneering noise recordings next to Frank Zappa's Lumpy Gravy and a couple others that really came out at that time. And also it played a big part in the, as I mentioned, the Paul is Dead rumor. If you played number nine backwards, it says, "Turn me on, dead man. Turn me on, dead man." And of course, there was a fire representing the fiery car crash that Paul had supposedly had a couple years
Yeah.
earlier. And of course, had a few members of the Beatles fucking around with their instruments. John, you go right, 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 fade that out and fade back in again.
Yeah. And then they closed the album with Good Night, which I guess has kind of been a way appropriate.
I am.
Ringo
Goodbye, good
sang
night.
that one.
Yes, I guess either Paul and John wrote that one. I guess they decided to have Ringo at a go at the singing. I guess.
Yeah. They'd give Ringo a song every once in a while, just I guess
Yeah.
just to keep him happy. I don't know.
Right. So yeah. So JB, what do you have to say about that the album there? What are your thoughts on this whole album here? We got to get his.
Um, well, I didn't want to derail the conversation, but I'm actually not a fan of the Beatles.
Oh yeah. Wow. Wow.
I respect their music, but I'm not really a Beatles fan. It kind of, I don't know, it just didn't click with me. I think I just kind of skipped them, went straight to Led Zeppelin. So,
Wow.
Well, the difference there is, in a way, I grew up with them,
hmm
and they were already there when you were born. So
right.
I kind of think that plays into it a little bit, but I could be
What
wrong.
you, but you guys are planning to cruise into the 70s here for too long, right?
Well,
So,
it's got a long way to go in the '60s.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, for you, unfortunately, but there's a lot of material in the '60s that's worth talking about.
I know one of the guys in my chat said we should probably talk about the other British bands that came afterwards, like the Kings,
Oh, we will.
the Dave Clark Five, and plus
Herman's
Herman's Hermit.
Hermits. We
Yeah,
will.
I think we'll probably save that for Tuesday night when we continue this discussion there.
Yeah,
Well,
because we're not done with the
you old
Beatles yet.
farts, just let me know when you guys are in the '70s, and then we'll talk.
Oh,
And when we get to Led Zeppelin, because that's going to cover at least
oh
two.
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Once you guys get to Zeppelin and Sabbath and
Deep Purple.
and Judas Priest and all that '70s stuff that really hit hard. That's what and Sabbath, of course. You know.
Definitely will add you into the call for Shizzle.
Yeah, but still, I encourage everybody to listen to this because it's a good history.
Sure. I mean, I enjoyed listening to it. I've been listening. It's very like I know of the White Album, of course, not just because of the Charles Manson horse shit, but like I know of the White Album. My brother is one of the biggest Beatles fans I know. They call him Beatle Bailey, but but yeah,
After
he's a
the old
huge
comic
Beatles
strip.
fan. Yeah, it's where he's it's where his guys at the house got the name for him. But he's always been Beatles, Pink Floyd. Those have always been his two big bands.
Yep.
Gee, perhaps maybe he should join us.
I know. I tell you,
I was going to say, yeah.
you got him with the Beatles and Floyd, and then in his room, that's what he's cranking to, and then you go to my room and Zeppelin's playing loud enough to blow the fucking windows out of the house. That's just the way it was.
Oh, I used to do that too.
Anytime you would come to my house, more often than not, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to derail what you guys are talking about, but more often than not, you would either hear Physical Graffiti on my CD player, or you would hear Houses of the Holy. It was one of those. It was one of those two albums.
Oh yeah.
Excellent
So
choices.
I can't wait till you guys get to that because I got a lot to discuss with those.
Oh,
But I'll let
definitely.
you guys get back to it, though, man. You guys are doing a great job.
All right, thank
appreciate
you. We
that.
appreciate that. And everybody, check out JB Sports Radio tomorrow, early afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the JB Sports Radio YouTube channel there. Definitely.
Thank you, Earl. Thank you, Stroker Bean.
Sure.
I'll see you guys later.
All right.
All right, have a good one. All right, sweet.
The next one is Yellow Submarine.
Oh, yeah.
Side one is songs. Side two is the orchestral film score.
Yes, originally. Now, of course, they made a new version of that not too long ago, a couple of years back, which is with all the Beatles music that was included in the movie there. It was an animated movie there. It's, I guess the storyline is, it's one of the most trippiest animation flicks that are out there.
Yep. Well, they opened it with, well, I guess what you'd call the title track, Yellow Submarine.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And I guess it also fits to say that you remember the Blue Meanie wrestler that wrestled with ECW for a few years there. Now, and he was made out to look just like the Blue Meanie from that movie.
Right.
Now, my question is, did ECW get the copyrights ahead of time for anybody from Apple Films or the Beatles Corporation, got on their case about that particular character?
I don't know the story behind that one, so I'm not real sure.
Oh, so probably look that up sometime there. Let me look it up there. The Blue Meanie Wrestler.
And then followed that up with Only a Northern Song, which is a good Harrison composition. And then All Together Now, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, open up another door or something like that. I don't remember exactly how that went. Then Hey Bulldog followed that one. And then a pretty heavy Harrison composition, It's All Too Much, which was covered by Journey on one of their first two albums.
Oh, yeah.
And then All You Need Is Love closed it. And then you got like I said, the orchestral side, but most people aren't going to be interested in the title names.
Yeah.
For those because they're what they are, I suppose.
Yeah, I was looking at here. Well, the guy's name is Brian Heffron. He's better known as his wrestling ring named the Blue Meanie. He is a professional wrestler and occasional actor. He's known for his appearances with ECW, WWE, and it's of course a reference to the Blue Meanies, the
Right.
antagonists from the '68 animated movie Yellow Submarine, featuring the Beatles. And I'm going to look on somehow somewhere if there's if they ever got any story behind if the Beatles Apple Corps any sent them any letters or any notices about any cease and desist type of thing there
Well, I
about that character.
seriously doubt the Beatles did it, but whoever knows, whoever at that time had control of things might have.
Um, and also at that time, the Blue Meanie started was called a wrestling faction called the Blue World Order, BWO.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah, I remember that. That came during the midst of the Attitude Era there. That great time in wrestling, which we'll have to talk about later on, I guess, sometime. All right, so Yellow Submarine, and now we get to the last two records there.
And this next one, actually, the Beatles had a lot of good albums, obviously, but this one
Hmm.
was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, Abbey Road,
Yeah, starts with
absolutely.
"Come Together," which is a Lennon composition, obviously,
Yeah. Hmm.
and again you get into the Lennon strange lyrics.
Yep. And plus, as I mentioned, "Come Together" was, according to Chuck Berry, there a ripoff of one of his songs, which title I forgot, kind of forgot, but they had the same, similar vocal and writing style. They were similar to one another. I guess Chuck Berry took the Beatles to court for that. I don't know if it was who favored in that decision or if they settled out of court or whichever there. Who knows?
Yeah. Next
Um,
one was a probably one of Harrison's best Beatles compositions, "Something."
oh, yeah. Probably one of their top-notch songs, which both John and Paul said was absolutely beautiful there.
Yeah, I think it was written about Patty Boyd, but I could be wrong. Which
Now
was
there's a now there's a video out there that somebody compiled together of all the Beatles with their soulmates. John with Yoko, um, Ringo with Maureen, you know, Harrison with Patty Boyd, and Paul with Linda there.
right,
But they were all filmed separately at this point in time, but they collaged them together as to make this one romantic music video, Gare, which
right.
probably would to go along with one of the most romantic love songs that Fat Four ever composed.
Yeah. Next song was Maxwell Silverhammer,
Hmm.
and that was followed by "Oh Darling," which was a pretty good McCartney composition.
Hmm.
Then "Octopus's Garden," which is Ringo. He wrote it and sang it.
Ah, nice.
And then Lennon's contribution to heaviness on this album, "I Want You, She's So Heavy," which it definitely was. It was 7 minutes of just hard, heavy.
Heavy there. Hard, probably one of the most tripped out things they have ever talked about there. You know, and plus it had a lot of one of I'm not too sure what that sound effect is towards the last few minutes of that track.
Yeah.
And I guess, but it is a trip to listen to. It's like a storm coming at you while the band is still playing.
And the funny thing is when it gets to the end, it just abruptly quits. It
Yep,
just kind
just
of,
and that
and
was about it. I think I don't know if that was the first time that was ever done before, because I
mm,
don't think I think because a couple other albums have ended with something like that. I know Cleanse and Manipulate by Skinny Puppy was one that closed out their album with a particular instrumental track, and it just stops right at.
yeah, which is kind of an unusual thing, but it does happen occasionally.
Mhm.
Side two opens with "Here Comes the Sun," another Harrison composition, which was an excellent song.
And I guess let me interrupt this. And I'm looking at the subject behind "Come Together." And according to this, um, talking about and come together, what they're talking about here is said to be about the four Beatles themselves. The first verse is about Ringo because of his haircut, used to be slightly flat. The second verse was about George because of the monkey finger part,
Right.
and George could play any. And I read somewhere that George could play any song. And the third verse is obviously about John. Either way,
Right.
yeah,
But those were definitely strange lyrics.
absolutely, definitely. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, Aerosmith did a most awesome cover of that tune there, and also Michael Jackson did it for the Moonwalker video.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Sergeant Pepper, the very famous cover
Yep,
uh, with a little help from my friends by Joe Cocker.
that's right. Yeah. Well, it was mostly a little help with my friends without the first Sergeant Pepper song there. It was
Right.
just about that. We all know the Woodstock version like the back of our hands,
Oh,
and how it was
absolutely.
performed.
Famous.
Very famous there.
Next song was Because, which is a absolutely beautiful harmony song
Hmm.
with three of the four Beatles involved. And then You Never Give Me Your Money.
Yep. Now, I'm not too sure what that song is about. I guess it's about business dealings, for what I understand, if I'm correct, or they're lashing out on one another for some reason.
Right.
Hmm. I got to look that up probably sometime soon there when I'm not doing anything there. And of course, we get to the melody, all the tracks clocked together.
Everything
Sun
that comes
King,
together. Mean Mr.
everything.
Mean Mr. Mustard, Polythene Pam. She came in through the bathroom window, which was also covered by Joe Cocker.
Yeah.
Golden Slumbers, Carry That
Mhm.
Weight, The
The
End,
end. The end with
which
probably
that's
one of
a
the most coolest
fantastic. I mean, it's got a
guitar solos on there, as well as the Ringo's drum solo in there.
yeah. They incorporate a little bit of everything in the song that's only about 2 minutes long.
Yeah. And of course, the very last track there, Her Majesty, which is
Yeah,
about a couple of seconds long there.
yeah. Just kind of a little thing they threw at the end.
Yep. And it's kind of like that. One of the Rio's DJs back in Michigan pretty summed it up with the end there. And in the end, the love you make is equal to the love you take.
Yeah,
And that's about it. And that was it. The end, very end. Well, not necessarily the big end. Before the release of that album, they decided to make another movie, which was about how Beatle compositions come together.
yeah,
Excuse the pun. And then that movie would be titled "Let It Be," and the soundtrack album would be "Come Forward," and with they're totally different sound. Apparently, what the story was that the songs were not that good, and Phil Spector, the man behind the Wall of Sound that he did with the Ronettes and these other groups that he produced, um, he came in and brought in a few orchestral arrangements for "Long and Winding Road," "Let It Be," and I guess he did a lot of remixing of that album. When you look at it there,
yeah. Later they released an album that was Let It Be Naked, which took all that stuff out.
yeah, as it was like it originally was intended.
Right.
Yeah. And
Okay.
there was a lot of controversy about that film because in there was now I'm going to go by what people said about the movie. This was a period when the Beatles were on their last limbs. There was a couple scenes where Paul is getting on George's case about the way he's playing. John Lennon singing across the universe with Paul yawning in the back. I remember that was included in one of the scenes. And plus, there was also a couple of times. Bernie Thompson, the lyrics is for Elton John's the lyrics is for his songs. I'm getting tongue tied here, folks. You have to pardon me. He basically said in an interview, you could watch that whole movie and you could see right there, this is a band that was falling apart. But when another insider who was there at the time said that what the camera did not capture were the Beatles laughing, giggling, having a good time while working on this song, working on that song. So I don't know if that was ever caught on film, but if it was, it needed to be included in a new version that they should come out to answer all the questions that were asked about that movie. Was this the laugh? Was the Beatles were at each other's throats behind the cameras there? And if you also notice in a lot of the footage of their together, Yoko Ono is in the studio with the Fab Four. Now, one of the big rules of the at that time was no girlfriends or wives were supposed to be allowed in the recording studio when the Beatles recorded their stuff.
Right.
John Lennon was one of the first to break that rule. Obviously, he was trying to branch out into doing other things, as we all know, with some of his discussions, his views on the Vietnam War, which at that time was starting to pick up momentum there.
Right.
Lennon decided, to bring Yoko to the studio, have her hang around to the other Beatles' dismay for what the fuck, what the hey. And I guess, that kind of like, busted up the pace.
Right.
Or helped it busting up the pace, as they would say there.
Despite all that, there were some pretty good songs. I mean, really good songs in this album. The first
But,
one, too.
who knows? I wasn't there at that time, so who
Yeah.
knows?
First song was
You
two
there,
of us.
Arky?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh,
Arknolia?
wait a minute.
Oh,
Somehow I was on mute. I don't know why.
oh wow. Well, no, I didn't even
No,
notice that
it
you were
just,
on mute there.
that's okay.
Yeah, I was
This
talking up.
album, yeah,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
heard you fine. That's
Yeah.
why it didn't dawn on me I was on mute. Uh,
Oh,
this album actually had a lot of pretty decent songs on it, I thought.
it had, yeah. Two of Us, I Dig a Pony, the title cut, obviously there, which was later
Across the
you.
Universe, I
Russ,
liked that song.
yep, and of course the closing track, "Get Back," which was recorded on that rooftop there,
Yeah.
and that was
Then,
actually the real last Beatles performance when you think about it.
yeah. And George Harrison contributed I Me Mine, which was a good song.
Yeah, which is about the conflicts that they were having at that time with in terms with management, the Apple Records situation,
Yeah.
their issues with EMI.
Yeah. And we had, you mentioned Let It Be.
Yep.
And they had a couple of little short numbers that were okay. Dig It and Maggie May.
Hmm.
And then I've Got a Feeling, which is a good song. One
Hmm.
After 909. And one of the McCartney things, Long and Winding Road.
Yeah.
And For You Blue, which was another Harrison song.
Uh-huh.
Then Get Back.
That's right. Yeah. And I guess the idea of that whole album was, basically let's get back to the basic rock and roll stuff. Let's put away the psychedelic stuff. Let's put away all that. Just be a regular rock band like they did with Abbey Road and this one.
Yeah.
And fortunately, that was it. That was the last we'd ever hear of the Fab Four. They officially split up in April of 1970. All four Beatles would remain on Apple Records. They would release solo careers. Paul McCartney would release one more solo album called Ram, and later put together his post-Beatles group called Wings. They would make a ton of records throughout the 70s.
Right.
And Lennon would later become an anti-war angry artist. Harrison would later do his, kind of stuff there with All the Things Must Pass, which was considered the first triple album, from what I understand.
Yeah.
And of course, Ringo would do his thing there with his records and his few appearances at a couple movies here and there.
Yeah, and we'll basically get into some of that. Uh, well, one song that wasn't on any of the other albums that I wanted to mention
Yeah.
but showed up on the Rarities albums. One called "The Inner Light" by Harrison,
Yeah.
which was a flip of Lady Madonna,
Um,
which it was again a real interesting song in the way that it was Indian related. It
it was an Indian Desi, as they're often called nowadays. Well, what they often called when we speak of Indian, we originally we thought about the Native Americans at
but
that
we're
time.
talking
That's now
about the
they're
people
called.
in India.
Yes.
Yeah, and two other songs that for some reason don't seem to be listed on this, but I know
Mm.
were later done on a Rarities type album were Paperback Writer and
Uh-huh.
Rain.
Yeah.
Don't think
And
I
of course,
missed any.
not that I know of. And of course, we also cannot forget all the compilations that came out afterwards. First, it was the Beatles 62 to 66, the often
Right,
christened the Red Album. And of course, we had the Blue Album, which spotlighted the stuff from 67 to 1970. That was later christened the Blue Album because of the blue outline outside of the photos there. And it featured only two photos that the of the Fab Four then and now at the EMI building there, where that first shot was later featured in the UK version of Please Please Me.
right.
They decided to do a remake of that in their modern form with all the hair and mustaches and beards and everything.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting look.
Interesting, interesting there. And of course, later on, we would have rock and roll music, which was a two-disc compilation of all their hard rock and roll songs there. We also would have love songs, which featured, of course, only the love songs.
Right,
We would have rarities. We will also have real music, REEL, featuring all the music from the movies like Yellow Submarine, Help, and all those others. Magical Mystery Tour there.
right,
And of course, later on, and then we would get the Beatles reissues on CD, featuring mostly the UK stuff there. I know for a while the Capitol albums US box set would be released somewhere in 2005, from what I remember. And plus, we get the Beatles anthology 1 through 3.
yeah,
When those
yeah,
albums featuring the first two Beatles tracks in how many years? And the story was that Yoko provided Paul, George, and Ringo two songs that basically were demos that Lennon worked on piano there.
right.
And they decided to get Jeff Flynn, George's buddy from the Traveling Wilburys, to do the production of those tracks there.
Yeah,
Those songs would become massive hit on the MTV, VH1, as you could probably tell. And the most interesting video they ever no doubt would have to be Free as a Bird, one of the
right.
two tracks, because it shows all these Beatle references left and right, including the Blue Meanie, newspaper taxi, a car wreck
Right.
taken from a day in the life, footage of the Beatles at the Cavern Club, you name it. All from the viewpoint of a flying bird flying through the air there.
Oh, and two more songs that made one of the albums later. I think Rarities too.
Oh yeah.
Hey Jude
Mm-hmm.
and the flip side, Revolution, the original. Well, not the original.
The rock
The
version,
rock version of it.
the heavy version of it. Yeah, that was one of the first albums tracks that featured a distorted guitar. So on that track there.
Right.
Keep that in mind. All right. All right. So I guess because this concludes our spotlight on the Beatles. There, I guess I take it.
Right.
Or
And
there's
then next week we'll start with something else, which Dr. Earl and I will discuss, but it'll be 60s related.
yeah, all the bands that would later follow the Beatles when they first started. And as I mentioned, we were going to cover the Kinks, Hermits, the Rolling Stones, this British group, that British group,
Yeah,
the Yardbirds.
if we don't kind of break them up, we're gonna cover weeks on this because there's
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of them.
oh yeah, a lot of subjects to
You got
talk
the
about.
animals.
Yeah, Eric Burden and the boys there, and their signature song. A
Yeah,
lot
House of
of,
the Rising Sun.
lot of, yep, a lot of. We got to talk about that song as well, fine, because apparently there is an actual House of the Rising Sun located somewhere in New Orleans, Louisiana.
If I'm not mistaken, that song was actually, I think it was written by someone else, and the animals covered it.
Yeah.
And a very decent cover was done by a group called Frigid Pink.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Have you heard it?
I think I have. Yes.
It's very heavy, metally.
Yeah. Yes. I remember hearing it on the Michigan radio back in the day. There,
Yeah,
definitely. But probably one of the most iconic songs. Come about a damn man desperate, I guess, down on his luck. Warning. I got to look up the story there when we get
yeah,
to that next Tuesday there.
yeah. That's what I'm kind of thinking is we can start out with, I guess, well, the Stones are going to have to be done on their own.
Yeah.
And
I think we could probably save them for Thursday there, for our Thursday episode.
yeah, probably, well, no, because this one we're going to do Tuesday is going to bleed into Thursday real easy.
Yep,
Because there's no way we can cover all of them.
that's true. Oh, we got ourselves a long list there before we get to the 1970s. That's for sure, man.
Oh, without a doubt, because we didn't even do the American part yet.
Oh yeah, the American rock and roll bands out there like the Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, or the Guess Who from Canada.
Yeah, and well, they actually hit in the 70s, I think.
Yeah, they,
Um, then we've got the Beach Boys and, or I guess what you would call surf music.
oh yeah,
So there's a bunch of that.
yeah.
We're going to be busy, and anybody has any contributions, put them in the contacts, or if you know how, contact one of us and tell us, hey, cover this, cover that, go over this, go over that, and we'll try to get to everything.
Yes, definitely. All right, so I guess this concludes our part two of the Beatles and all their albums there, I guess.
Right.
So, all right. So that's going to conclude it for this episode of our Music Memory series. Be with us as we continue this discussion on Tuesday,
And
7
then
p.m.
and then
7.
tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central Eastern and 6 p.m. Central, we're going to go over the Ray Harryhausen movies.
Uh-huh. Yes, we got to definitely talk about this guy there because I didn't know who this guy was until you mentioned it to me.
Oh, he was your ultimate monster man.
Oh yeah, all the monster that he created for all these flicks up there.
Yeah,
All right, so tomorrow night it'll be about 7 p.m. Eastern time.
right.
All right, and for Arknolia and myself, you guys have a good one.
Goodbye. It was nice
And
talking to you.
all right, and also.